morning everybody, good morning, it's JPR and welcome back to another video. PokeBalls, the most iconic items in the entire series. As of making this video, there are 37 different variants of them, and sadly, not all of them are very good. I don't know why I did that one was actually pretty good. Bro, I literally dented it just for that intro, I cannot believe that. But let's go over some of the best and worst ones in the existence of the franchise. Starting us off on the best side of things, we have the Dive Ball, which may also potentially hold the title for the most improved Pokeball. At the time of its introduction in Generation 3, the Dive Ball was arguably one of the worst in the game. It had a pretty good catch multiplier of 3.5, but only when it was used underwater. You know how many different species of Pokemon you can catch underwater in Hoenn? Like, 3. On top of that, the Net Ball, also introduced in Gen 3, is a catch multiplier of 3 on all water and bug types, which makes it nearly as effective as a Dive Ball but covers way more Pokemon. But in Gen 4, the Dive Ball received a buff more significant than most actual Pokemon have ever gotten, now granting you a 3.5 times catch multiplier on any Pokemon that you encounter in a water area, be it on the water surface, underwater, or by fishing. Not to mention, it's just aesthetically one of the best looking Pokeballs, both in terms of the design and the effect when you send a Pokemon out. Pretty much any water type Pokemon looks immaculate coming out of this ball. But whatever you do, please don't confuse this ball with the infinitely less useful Lure Ball. The Lure Ball is one of the special balls crafted by Kurt from Gen 2. Too bad Kurt wasn't a better ballsmith. The ball grants you a decent 3 times catch multiplier when fishing in the Johto-based games, which still makes it worse than a Dive Ball in Heart Gold and Soul Silver, which is probably why Game Freak wisely excluded that ball from those games. Now, the Lure Ball is actually quite amazing in Pokemon Sun and Moon, giving you a whopping 5 times multiplier when catching hooked Pokemon. But you can literally only get one of these in the entire Alola region, not to mention Sun and Moon kinda ruined fishing forever, so even there it's not super useful. In Sword and Shield, it was nerfed down to a 4 times multiplier, which still makes it better than a Dive Ball when fishing, but seeing as how this ball is still incredibly scarce, you may as well keep using the Dive Balls. But the icing on top has to be what the heck happened to this ball in Scarlet and Violet. Because fishing is now entirely gone in Gen 9, the Lure Ball is changed to function exactly the same as a Dive Ball, just working on any kind of aquatic Pokemon. But because Game Freak is bad at making video games, the Lure Ball is currently glitched and does not give you any kind of a catching bonus whatsoever. And 1 year, 2 DLCs, and countless bug fixes later, yeah, they still haven't addressed this. This ball is literally useless. Also, even if it did work properly, Dive Balls just look cooler, don't at me. Swinging the pendulum back to the side of good though, let's discuss Heavy Balls. No, Kurt, I'm not talking about yours, and I'm especially not talking about those other things. Rather, I'm discussing the Heavy Ball and its siblings, the Leaden Ball and Gigaton Ball from Pokemon Legends Arceus. Aside from the fact that it's oddly satisfying to clock a wild Pokemon on the back of their skull and give them a concussion with one of these bad boys, it also helps that this is just the objectively best ball in the game, as apparently all 3 iterations of this ball will grant you the bonus you would have gotten for hitting them from behind in a normal battle, regardless of whether the Pokemon noticed you beforehand or not. Which means the Gigaton Ball's default catch multiplier in a battle is 2.75, which always makes it better than an Ultra Ball. The only thing this ball can't do is pay for your Pokemon's irreparable cranium surgery. But hopefully that's something they'll shake off eventually. Back to the worst Pokeballs though, let's discuss Heavy Balls. Hey Kurt, we are talking about you again. The Heavy Ball gives you multiple different catch bonuses depending on how heavy the Pokemon you're trying to catch is. Unlike most Pokeballs though, this is not a multiplier, rather just 20, 30, or 40 being added to the Pokemon's base catch rate, which in a lot of cases is just straight up worse. In Gen 2, the generation that the Heavy Ball originates from, the Heavy Ball grants you plus 40 when used against only one Pokemon in the game, Snorlax. This boosts Snorlax's catch rate from 25 to 65, but a regular Ultra Ball would double it from 25 to 50. So yes, the Heavy Ball is better, but only marginally. And only for one Pokemon. Most other Pokemon that fall into the higher weight tiers either aren't catchable in the wild, or their catch rates are actually higher when you use an Ultra Ball on them, making the Heavy Ball nearly obsolete. And while more heavy Pokemon have been introduced over time, for some reason the Heavy Ball itself keeps getting worse. The highest tier that grants you plus 40 was phased out starting in Gen 7, so the ball only goes up to plus 30 now. Also, in Heart Gold and Soul Silver, the ball was coded incorrectly, so the ball actually lowers your chances to catch any Pokemon that weighs less than 451 pounds. Which is essentially every catchable Pokemon in the game except for like Onix and Snorlax. A regular Pokeball is actually more effective than a Heavy Ball in these games 99% of the time. But even by today's standards, the amount of Pokemon that actually appear in the wild that get any kind of a substantial bonus from the Heavy Ball is incredibly low. There's probably like less than 5 species that this thing works decently on. Up next, let's discuss God's gift to Pokedex completionists, the Quick Ball. This is probably one of the most straightforward and convenient Pokeballs in the entire game. If used in the first turn of a battle, it grants an amazing 5 times catch multiplier. Pretty much anything with a catch rate above 70 is nearly guaranteed to be caught every time, which covers like 85% of the decks. Just don't use them on a shiny Pokemon or the internet will judge you for it. I'm not saying I'll judge you for it, but somebody definitely will. Oh, hey guys, look, it's me. Oh, got you with my... got to stop throwing this thing, my god. Oh, got you with my Quick Ball. Now you gotta subscribe to the channel, so I don't make the rules anyway. You gotta do it now. Back to the worst. All right, Kurt, you get a rest. We're actually not coming after you again for a bit. Let's talk about the Nest Ball. The Nest Ball works very well on low-leveled Pokemon, granting a catch multiplier of 4 to Pokemon at level 1, none of which spawn in the wild, I might add. And by level 30, it's just as effective as a normal Pokeball. This also means that if you're trying to catch any Pokemon above level 20, an Ultra Ball will just be better. Honestly, this ball feels rather useless considering that most Pokemon that spawn at low levels already have extremely generous catch rates. To make matters worse, most Pokemon games don't give you Nest Balls until the point in the game where they've already stopped being effective. In Black and White, the first Nest Ball you can get is on Unova Route 8. Every Pokemon on that route till the end is level 30 or above, so they actually will be less effective than a normal Pokeball. I'd say this feels more like a Gen 2 Pokeball than a Gen 3 Pokeball, but honestly, I have to commend Kurt for once. He actually made a straight up better version of this ball. The Level Ball functions similarly to the Nest Ball, but is based on your Pokemon's level in relation to the wild Pokemon. If your Pokemon is at least 1 level higher than the wild Pokemon, then you have a straight up ×2 multiplier, making it just as good as an Ultra Ball. If you're double the wild Pokemon's level, you get a ×4 multiplier. And if you're quadruple its level, you get a massive ×8. The only strike against the Level Ball is that in Gen 2, the ball is glitched to ignore the wild Pokemon's remaining HP and status condition. But hey, in every other game, this is one heck of a ball. Staying on best for a moment though, let's discuss the Dusk Ball. In fact, it's one of the few Pokeballs that was so good it actually needed to be nerfed, and is still considered good despite that. In Gens 4 through 6, the Dusk Ball give you a massive 3.5 times multiplier in any dark area or anywhere at all during nighttime. That's absurd! Just for playing the game at a certain time of day, you can make this ball just as good, if not better, than any other widely available ball in the game. Even after the ball got nerfed to a ×3 multiplier in Gen 7, it's still arguably one of the best all-around Pokeballs in the series. And like the Dive Ball, aesthetically speaking, it's a 10 out of 10. But sadly, Gen 4 did not hit all of them out of the park. The biggest dud from this generation is definitely the Heal Ball. It is mildly convenient for the first hour of the game, and then ceases to have any kind of an effect once you have a full party. Oddly, this ball has actually been buffed as of Gen 8, since Pokemon are no longer automatically healed when they go to your box, but still, for the vast majority of the series, this ball has been pretty useless. And even now, a Heal Ball just saves you 20 seconds of healing your newly caught Pokemon. It's barely even a convenience. Well, I guess that is like 8 TikToks, so maybe the young kids actually vibe with this ball. But it's sad, because aesthetically, I actually quite like this ball and its visual effects. But in terms of usefulness, it feels like they really didn't think it through. Maybe if this thing gradually healed your Pokemon outside of battle, it could be seen as a halfway decent ball. But for a one-time effect, it's not great. Alright, buckle up kiddos, because we're coming down to our final balls. Hey, stop giggling, we're supposed to be adults! And since you've made it this far, I think you deserve to hear a little something about the Timer Ball. The Timer Ball, like the Dive Ball, was not very impressive when it was first introduced, as it would take a whopping 30 turns for it to reach its max potential. But in Gen 5, the Timer Ball became one of the best, reaching a ×4 multiplier after only 9 turns. Now it only takes 4 turns for a Timer Ball to be better than an Ultra Ball, and after 7 turns it's better than a Dusk Ball. Of all the Pokeballs that can be bought in bulk, this one actually has the highest catch rate of them all. It's also perfect for legendaries whose battles more often than not last a little bit longer than you'd like.
Come on, get in there!
But back to the worst, we have to discuss the Love Ball. Oh Kurt, you nearly managed to slip away from us. This may be one of the most ridiculously niche balls in all of Pokemon. It grants you an incredible ×8 multiplier, but only if the wild Pokemon is the same species and the opposite gender of the Pokemon you're using. But, as with most Gen 2 Pokeballs, this one also suffers from a glitch where it grants you the bonus if the wild Pokemon is the same species and the same gender. Or maybe it wasn't a glitch and Game Freak was just really progressive back then. Who can really say? Although it's only slightly more niche than one of Kurt's other Pokeballs, that being the Moon Ball, which grants you a ×4 catch multiplier on Pokemon that evolve with a Moonstone. it's a pretty short list. And to make matters worse, this ball is also glitched in Gen 2. I know, big surprise. But instead of this ball having an unintended effect, it actually just has no effect. Yes, even when used against Pokemon like Clefairy or Jigglypuff, who it's supposed to work on, the ball just never gives you a multiplier, which is honestly kinda funny. Anyway, just be based and use the one that you get on the Blood Moon Ursa Luna just to be cool. It's a better use than that ball is ever gonna get elsewhere. And for our last good Pokeball, we have the Dream Ball. The Dream Ball is a rather strange case of a Pokeball. It was introduced in Gen 5 as an event-exclusive ball used for transferring Pokemon from the Dream World to the Entralink. It was mostly forgotten about until Verlisify used it against until Generation 8 inexplicably brought them back and changed their effect, making it so they have a ×4 catch rate on any Pokemon that's fallen asleep. Unfortunately, I don't believe this stacks with the 2.5 times rate that sleeping Pokemon already give you, but that would be kinda ridiculous. So I suppose ×4 is pretty solid. Not the world's greatest Pokeball, but it's nice to see how they retooled it into something useful. But to end things off with our last terrible, horrible, no good, very bad Pokeball, we have the Fastball. Not to be confused with the Quick Ball, which is actually good. In Gen 2, the Fastball was intended to give you a ×4 multiplier on any Pokemon that could run away during battle. If you didn't know the Pokemon could do that in Gen 2, don't worry, neither did I until very recently. Apparently, 21 Pokemon are coded with a chance to run at any point in a battle. Though, realistically, it's 15, because Articuno, Zapdos, Moltres, Togetic, Porygon, and Eevee don't appear in the wild in Gen 2. Why are they on the list then? I don't know, I didn't make these games. But apparently these Pokemon are split into 3 tables. Pokemon that have a 10% chance of fleeing, Pokemon that have a 50% chance of fleeing, and Pokemon that have a 100% chance of fleeing. Also, Entei, Raikou, and Suicune aren't included on this list, and I have no idea why. Not that it really matters, because Game Freak messed up and made it so that only the Pokemon in the 10% group are affected by the Fastball. What Pokemon does this group include? Magnemite, Grimer, and Tangela. Yep, that's it. Those are the only 3 that this ball works on. In Gen 4, this ball was overhauled to have a ×4 multiplier on any Pokemon with a speed stat over 100, which makes a lot more sense because Grimer does not strike me as the epitome of speed. So now, instead of affecting only 3 Pokemon, now the Fastball works on 153 Pokemon. Unfortunately, a lot of them don't spawn in the wild, so it's still not the greatest ball, but at least it's a lot better than it once was. And the same can be said for my Quick Ball, unfortunately, so if you want to help me out in buying a new one, then be sure to like this video if you enjoyed it, subscribe for more videos just like this one, and I'll see you guys next time.